my knee-jerk reaction was, this has to be like an April Fool's joke, right? And there was some more colorful language used, but basically the paraphrase was, I wouldn't joke with you about something like this.
Welcome to this episode of Inside the SCCA. I'm Brian Bielanski, and this is going to be an interesting episode. Usually I'm all excited about doing an episode. Like, that's going to be a great episode. Well, this is going to be a great episode, but there's a little different tone to this. And, we do a lot of ultra positive stuff on this channel. And I would say the vast majority of stuff on this channel is ultra positive, but we do have issues in our sport. And sometimes things make us have to do tough discussions. And we've done some shows having to do with like the loss of a race car driver or the loss of a member of our community. And they're somber shows, but I feel like they're important to do. This, while thank God nobody has died, feels a little bit like that because we have lost or are losing one of the great facilities for playing that we have in this country, PITT Race. We found out about this a couple months ago, and not even little more than a month ago, and it was a shock to everybody involved. And I've got someone with us today who, in addition to being a dear friend of mine, has been, and actually a big part of the success of this podcast, I'll be honest. And he is with us today because he's also been on the front lines of trying to figure out what the heck happened to PITT Race. If there's any way to stop it. They've been working hard. And which, I don't know, we're going to talk about it in a minute. From what I can tell, doesn't look like it's going to get stopped. But also, there's been a lot of learnings gone on in the last 6 weeks or so. The guy with me, Dan Dennehy-Rodriguez, my dear friend. How are you?
Good, brother. It's good to be with you.
Yeah.
Would be better under different circumstances, but glad that we can be having this conversation so that everyone across the country can learn more about what we're going through, as well as how these learnings are important to help everyone across motorsports, because if it can happen here, it can happen anywhere.
Yeah, it's true. So let's go back to the start of this, and October 1st, you wake up, and the world is in just like it was when you went to bed on September 30th, I guess.
Yeah.
And then at 4:00 that afternoon, things changed. Tell me the story.
Sure. And it's a very weird one because it's very happenstance, but I actually played a little bit of hooky from work. And I know my boss will be listening to this, but he won't be upset because he's also an SCCA member. But a friend of mine needed a set of tires as a champ car race was going to be held the following weekend at the track. So I ran up some tires to the track. PITT Race, to give a very quick context, because context is king. I worked at PITT Race for several years as a corner worker. I know the staff there very well because as a local member of the Steel Cities region and the race chair for the last 2 years, I would work with them to host the different events that we held. So I know everyone there very well. And if you know Dan, I make myself at home. So when I walked into the pro shop at the track, it was a little bit different because we were always greeted by a really wonderful young lady. Her name's Laura, who works the shop, and she was not there. Walked into the rest area, which normally has a couple people hanging around, and no one was there. So I walk upstairs into the office and come to see the majority of the staff all there, and just a different kind of, let's say, vibe in the room. And so one of the operational leaders of the track is Dave Hoyce, who I've known for a decade easily. And I look into his office and I provide him with the universal sign of what's going on.
Right.
And in his office were some other leaders of the track, including the owner. And he actually excused them and asked me into his room, his office. It was interesting because it felt like a principal moment.
Yeah.
Those moments of, hey, you, need you here now.
Mm.
And we had just hosted Time Trials Nationals. So my immediate thought was, oh my gosh, was something happen? Is there something that I need to jump into? That sort of a thing. And when Dave sat me down, he said, hey, got some difficult news to share with you, but you've got really good, bad timing or bad, good timing.
Mm.
And the track's closing. It's been sold. We are not able to share because we simply do not know. But as of now, we will run out the balance of this season. And come December 31st of next year, this will no longer be a track.
Wow.
And Dave's a good friend from my previous vocation. A lot of the people he knows are people who I know. And what was interesting, my knee-jerk reaction was, this has to be like an April Fool's joke. Right. And there was some more colorful language used, but basically the paraphrase was, I wouldn't joke with you about something like this.
Right.
This is real. We've just told staff. We only just found out about it ourselves a few moments ago.
Wow.
And so I offered my help to Dave. Hey, what can I be doing to serve you and this team? And he said, nothing you can do. I'm going to call the other 40 people who lease our track and let them know the news because it should come from us. And a public announcement will be shared later this afternoon. And so to wrap up my October 1st, I spent the next hour and a half with the staff, knowing, again, a lot of those people there, just hearing from them what they knew, talking amongst our tribe, Steel City specifically, for us to know and figure out a plan of communicating with the world what happened, what's going on with the track. Sadly, some of our local leaders, made the announcement before the track did.
Yeah.
And so I just put out a comment on Steel City's page to communicate what we knew, which was not much. But, it was obviously a pretty interesting challenge, that effort. So,
yeah. By the way, dogs are a regular part of our show, so don't worry about that. So to add some context from the outside world, just I believe less than 24 hours before this happened, Champ Car put out their schedule for 2026. PITT Race on that schedule. I had talked with several people from the SCCA, and the Time Trial Nationals planned to be at PITT Race in 2026. It was nothing happens in motorsports in a vacuum. I've been doing this for 35 years. There's not a single racetrack that has changed in any appreciable way that we didn't know was coming, potentially weeks, months, years ahead. Oh, this racetrack's in trouble, or owners are looking to sell. I mean, it's never. I mean, Willow Springs just sold to a investment firm, and we've known Willow Springs was for sale for 15 years? It's been for sale forever. Yeah. None of this stuff ever happens by surprise.
Correct.
Which is why when this came down, I mean, you may or may not have any inside knowledge of the whole process. But my guess is this came down with an offer days, a week before it happened that was so extraordinary that the people who own the track, who, as I understand, are extraordinarily passionate racers, just couldn't say no to that offer.
Yeah, there might be some more context in that statement, but overall, you're hitting all the right notes.
Yeah.
Jim and Kathy Stout, in full transparency, I owe them a lot in the sense that it was through their ownership of PITT Race, through their hiring of Aaron Hemmel, who provided me with my first motorsport job, that really allowed for me to have any future in motorsports. And that story continued with me working for the club, being able to do a lot of really cool things in that position as the partnership manager of the club for 3 years. A lot of things I'm really proud of. And to continue to be who I am in the motorsports sphere, which is now someone who does a lot of mentoring and leading of local programs. All of that begins and ends with PITT Race.
Yeah. Which is why I wanted to have you do this, because you have an affection for the people who made the decision to sell this racetrack. And I knew that you could come on and have a reasonable discussion. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are full of understandable rage, maybe hate, or, 40, 45, 50 people lost their jobs. We as enthusiasts lost, and I've never been to PITT Race, which really makes me sad now, because whatever it becomes of it, I'm not going to get a chance to ever even show up, let alone drive on that racetrack. But I knew you could come on and have a discussion, because I have a feeling from what I've heard from you in our discussions offline that even with all of this, you still have an affection for the people who made the decision to do this. But it's got to be hard, and I'm sure you want them to give you answers that they probably can't give at this moment and may never be able to give because of disclosures, right?
100%. There's two contesting feelings of emotion that I have, that I know a lot of people have as well. There's one, which is that the track was not originally PITT Race. It was Beaver Run.
Right.
It was incorporated in 2001, broke ground in 2002, and for those first, let's say, 10 years, operated as more of a country club, smaller club track. And the facility then was much more of what we would call a club track. Very few amenities, not great in the sense of, let's say, all the different things that a racetrack can bring to bear. And I say that, half of the paddock was gravel. Our timing and scoring building at that time were actually two truck cargo containers on each other.
Yep.
Right. So, it was a club track. We made do with what we had. But in 2008, through the Great Recession, that ownership group had a difficult time holding onto the track. It went into bankruptcy, and Jim and Kathy purchased it in 2011 and started their 14-year ownership of the track and facility. And year over year, very carefully, very intentionally reinvested in the track. And so for those 14 years, they built, Pittsburgh International Raceway Complex into a facility where now it is truly an international complex. It's I was having a conversation with Frank Schwartz, who I had on this cast before.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about the quality of PITT Race and also locationally where it is. And although PITT Race did not have the history or lore of the Mid-Ohio, Lime Rock, or Watkins Glen, when you talk about everything a facility brings to bear in motorsports, there are maybe 2 to 3 that are at or superior to PITT Race in the Northeast. And so there's, all of that to say that Jim and Kathy did a hell of a job to make the track what it is. But then on the other side, there's that everything you previously is true as well, which is that when we know that tracks are in an unhealthy place and position, we do hear about it within the motorsport community. A great comparison would be Palm Beach, right? PBIR was a couple years ago. We can talk about them later on because it is a relevant data point. But when they were sold, no one was confused as to why that was. They were in trouble. They were somewhat public about that through the community. Right. And whenever they sold, they gave a runway to facilitate a proper send-off of the track. PITT Race is very unique because the only example that feels similar, I was talking to my father-in-law who's from Baltimore.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Like a thief in the night.
Yep.
Right. A team was taken from them. That one night they had the Colts, the next night they don't. Right.
Yeah.
That's how it feels. to the motorsport community, that we had a nucleus in PITT Race that we woke up one day and it was gone.
Yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, it's one of those things where this never happens. It never happens this way. Do you know, so my background is in journalism, kind of parallel with motorsports. So I do a lot of digging into government documents and digging into different things. And one of the things I would do when I thought something was going on with a facility, whether it be racing or whatever, is I will do a search for zoning changes. And there are actually a couple of places in this world that I care about so much that I have a Google search that happens in the background, and I get a notification if there's ever any keywords that pop up, and I put zoning permit request for such and such such such. For whatever PITT Race is going to become, they may have needed to do a zoning change to pave the way for that. And that can be done in the background. And if you're not paying attention, no one ever has to know about it. Do you know if anything like that happened?
Yeah, perfect segue, because that's exactly what did happen. In October of last year, in 2024, the community that PITT Race resides in, it's a place called Big Beaver Borough. For the sake of alliteration and making my life a bit easier, I just refer to it now as Triple B.
Got it.
So Triple B went through a comprehensive rezoning of all their borders, and at that time, you labeled the PITT Race parcel as industrial.
Okay.
Previously, it was C2 mixed commercial residential space. Industrial makes most sense for the use case of the track. However, what is most interesting about the timetable preceding October 1st is on September 16th of this year, there was an ordinance added, Ordinance 245, which redefined the zoning rules within the Triple B, and specifically within the conditional use language added data centers. And so one of the reasons why the popular belief is that PITT Race is going to become a data center is because that language was added as conditional use. And you probably know this. I came to find this over the past couple of weeks. By that language being put in conditional use versus special use, that paves a much simpler path.
Yeah.
Or a data center, or also a power plant to support the data center to go on that property. There are still some checks and balances, but within a conditional use, when you look at how it's defined, that to meet or surpass the expectation, how it's written is very simple. And so that's what got a lot of locals starting to percolate. Is that the direction of where this is going?
Yeah. So the language is different from municipality to municipality, but typically the difference between a special use permit and a conditional use permit is a special use permit has a time specific. You can use it for this special purpose for X date to X date, whatever that may be. Sometimes it's like a week because you're having a special event. Sometimes it's a year or whatever. Conditional use permits are typically permanent until they're voted on and rescinded. So what's interesting to me, and maybe this is something that oh boy, there's so many questions in my brain. So many questions in my brain. And
that's why we're having this conversation, right?
So then I have to ask the question is, who asked for the conditional use language changing? Was it the people at PITT Race, or did some company come in and ask for the change to some local, I don't know what they call the people who are borough leaders or what?
It's a council.
Okay, so did this company go to a council member and say, hey, we need this conditional use change because we're going to make a play, we're going to make for PITT Race? Or did the owners of PITT Race get approached and then go to the town and say that we want this because someone's offered us the offer to buy the place? It's just very interesting. Do you know?
It is, and we don't know yet.
Okay.
I say yet because we follow a right to know application
Sure.
to try to find that information out. Now, I can tell you through conversations had with locals that are property owners around the track that there have been developers that in the past have tried to purchase the parcel and redevelop it. One redevelopment idea, which had some steam several years ago, was actually making the site into a casino. So a lot of Triple B neighbors were aware of that.
Sure.
And that was prior to a casino being built in the city of Pittsburgh. So it would have been the casino of Western Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And the Rivers Casino has been, a pretty successful, as many have become. So we don't know the particulars yet.
But you should know how it was voted on. Was there a big discussion? Was it voted for in a consent vote where like a bunch of things were voted for at the same time with one vote? Have you been able to figure that out?
Yes. So in September, on the 16th, there was a meeting that the council held. It was open doors and public. Right. The context of the ordinance change, there was a dialogue that one of our friends attended. At the time of this all happening, the prevailing belief was that this ordinance change was for a parcel beside the track and not the track. And so it was asked, because the gentleman in question who attended the meeting owns a prep shop that's beside the racetrack.
Okay.
If anyone goes to Race Protocol, it's a business that our friend Doug Weaver owns. And he went to the meeting with concern of, if a data center were to come in and there's people now coming in from out of town,
right,
they really should be aware that there's a racetrack right there and be mindful of the noise.
Yeah.
This is before any of us were really clocked into what a data center is. So right. Here we are thinking, we'll be loud for them.
Yeah, it's the other way around.
It's true. They're loud for us.
Yeah.
And so it was brought up then. It leads us to believe one of two things: either that the council did that of their own volition. I'm not one who believes in coincidence, though.
Yeah, I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, and so what we believe is that probably this summer, some sort of application was presented to the council in a closed door meeting, which they are allowed to do as a part of their business operations. That led to them writing this new ordinance and paved a way in order for an offer to be made at the track.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that was triggered by Jim and Kathy because they wanted to figure out a way to maximize the return of the track. Jim and Kathy are business people.
Yep.
I think everyone knows of their connection and their ownership of Coastal Pet. If you've ever been on site, you've met their dog, Striker. Before Striker, there was Turbo. They're passionate about pets and their business, but they're also passionate about business.
Right.
And it would make sense to secure industrial zoning.
Sure.
It would make sense for that language, because as you and I know, racetracks can be run well and be profitable. But the value of the track as a track versus its value to a developer with the aims of a data center, there's two different dollar signs attached.
Hugely different.
Outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like looking up your meal guide, your Zackett's guide, and you go to a diner with 1 star, and then you go to the Michelin star restaurant and it's got 4 stars. That's the difference between the value of a racetrack versus a data center when it comes to this world that we're talking about. So it's crazy. And you know what? With your right to ask request, if this was done verbally, if it was, hey, I'm Jeff Bezos and I want to build an Amazon data center in your location, and I'm going to call, council member Dennehy and say, hey, Dan, can you make this thing happen for us? If that was a telephone conversation, there'll be no right to know paperwork.
Because there's no record.
If there's no record of that telephone conversation, which my guess is may be the case. It might have been, can we take you out to dinner and have a discussion with you? That won't, there's no right to know for that. And that's not even under the table. That's just the way business works.
Yes.
Which is sad for this situation, but that is how the world works.
And that's one of the biggest questions I've gotten post the sale of PITT Race, being a part of the Safe PITT Race. Let's call it energy or movement, whatever our affiliation is. But how could it be that the owners of the track aren't allowed to disclose their future owners? And how could it be that elected officials are unable to communicate any correspondence outside of being pushed to do so
right
through a right to know application? And the thing that I've come to learn, and in part because of an article you sent over to me, which was very beneficial and really giving a good narrative around how this all works, is that if I'm a business developer and I'm going to any council saying I have the intent to purchase this property and intend to use it in this way, the second part of that statement is a form of intellectual property which needs to be protected, meaning even if I seek to make a misery making machine on this property, it's my intellectual property and it should be preserved and saved from my competitor either trying to underbid me or steal my IP.
Take it to a different level. If you live in a neighborhood and a family wants to move in that's maybe not typical for that neighborhood, and you find out this happened a lot in the 60s, a pressure campaign goes on to the people who own that property to not sell to that family. That's why we don't have to tell people who's buying these things when it happens. So while we hate it in this situation, as a business owner, and you've got a lot of business savvy. That's how I met you. You understand why it's done that way. So
100%. And one thing that's very clear about all the things that we're doing, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, later on, we're not trying to block a sale of private property. That is not the intention. All of this is out of concern for how that facility gets reused, and really bringing in the conversation of Palm Beach and what happened there, which was a private business was sold to a private business. The developer who came in had a focus and aim of developing that, I believe, into what was going to be something like an Amazon distribution center. And by the time they had torn everything down, Amazon moved on.
Yeah.
Because they didn't need it anymore. And so a perfectly good track. And I know a lot of people in Florida are going, well, PBIR towards the end was rough. But hey, it was a track. And in motorsports nowadays, beggars are not choosers because we have what we have.
Yeah.
And it's rare to see a new track be built right now.
Right.
So that all to be said, now it's recent news that someone's actually coming in to redevelop the site back to a racetrack.
Yeah.
And so common sense then prevails and goes, well, why then do any of it? Why not just have a new ownership group, go to the racetrack, breathe new life into it, and have it keep being successful?
Yeah.
And that, in many ways, feels like what we're experiencing at PITT Race.
Yeah.
In the last couple of weeks, I've had a lot of subject matter experts who are in AI and work in the very space of data centers and the power that they require. A lot of things we've come to find out, so within the next probably 2 years, is very realistic, that just like everything with technology, right? The computer power that my cell phone has used to exist within a warehouse, and now it's this big, right? And this is a better computer than the thing was in a warehouse, and that's not dissimilar from what we're expecting with AI computing.
Right.
So then why then take a perfectly good track and business and tear it all down?
Yeah.
So that in 2 years, the passing fascination of this business venture.
Right. Well, it's a gamble, A, and B, there aren't too many places in the world that may already have certain infrastructure in place that the locations to do this kind of stuff are few and far between. So Before we get a little bit deeper, I'm going to take a quick break. Thank the people to help me do the show. I'm going to give you about a minute and a half to think about this ahead of time because I didn't tell you about this before. We are going to do a tech tip in this show. So I'm going to come back and ask you for one thing. If you're getting ready to go do time attack for the first time with your street car, one thing you should think about tech-wise. You got 90 seconds to think about it and come up with it. Stand by.
Sounds good.
Taking the time now to thank all the people that helped me do this show. Let's see if I raise the proper hand. No, I was about to. It's right these people above my shoulder here. Porterfield Racing Brakes. They have been a long-time supporter of both Cal Club and this show. If you need brakes for your race car, for your street car, stuff to work on your brakes, stuff to work on your race car, go to Porterfield-brakes.com. Fantastic people, and they've been working with us now for several years, and we couldn't do a lot of what we do without them. Babyface Fabrication, they are the sponsor of our tech tip, which we're going to do here in just a minute. They are based out of North Carolina, and Josh is one of the best fabricators out there. Grew up in the fabricating world through NASCAR, working on cup cars and all that kind of stuff. Really, really talented guy, and he is doing a lot of work in SCCA stuff now as well. So a big thank you to Babyface Fabrication. I don't know who's going to pop up next, but I'm going to talk about Ray Esports next. Ray Esports, oh, look at that. I almost have the wheel memorized. Ray Esports is the official sim racing league of Inside the SCCA, and they do great stuff. I stunk up the joint in their Formula V race yesterday, and they also have Formula F or Formula Ford in iRacing and Spec Racer Ford stuff on Sundays. Fantastic group of people, mostly SCCA racers, so the racing is more respectful than a typical iRacing race. So check them out. Solar Performance Specialties. If you've ever been to an autocross, a national tour event, there's usually a trailer there. It's the good people at Solar Performance Specialties. They are awesome. Get some stuff from them every year for either my solo program, that's kind of funny saying my solo program, or other stuff. I bought a great pair of driving shoes from them this year as well. Really good people. They're at most of the solo national tour events and solo nationals, and if you're not going to see them there, go to their website and check them out. All of that information, of course, in the show notes. And finally, David Pinterick, he is a supporter of our show. He is an SCCA racer in GT1 and Spec MX5. He is also a fantastic guy with money. So if you're like me and don't know where to put your money, don't know how to save your money, need someone to guide you down that road, David Pinterick is the guy to go to. Of course, all of our helpers, all of our partners, all of their information is in our show notes, and check them out and tell them I sent you as well. All right, back now to Daniel Dennehy-Rodriguez, my good friend who has been on the front lines of trying to figure out what the heck's going on with PITT Race. I need to kind of fast forward the show a little bit. So we could talk about this probably for 3 days. And I love the journalist in me says, I want to dig into how all of this happens. But I think we need to fast forward just a tiny bit. Do you think at this point there's any chance that this is going to stay as a racetrack?
In the short term, no.
Okay. So let's then fast forward to what you told me today, which is really why I wanted to do this show. You're working to come up with you used the word playbook. That's a very political, inside baseball PR term, but it's exactly what it is. And that's why they use the term. You're working to develop, through all of what you're learning through this process, a playbook to help people who aren't in your area, who may face the same thing. Let's face it. Racetracks are hard to make money at. Racetracks are hard to find locations that won't piss off the neighbors. Racetracks are like airports in many regards. They're noisy. They're not really necessarily friendly to the neighborhood, and people complain about them, and usually the greasy wheel gets what they want. So let's talk a little bit about what you've learned. If, let's say, my racetrack is, all of a sudden I hear the grumblings, because usually there's grumblings. This is an unusual situation. I hear some grumblings. What are you learning? What can be done? What would have been done had you known about this going in?
If I would have known now, if I would have known then what I know now, one of the first things we would have done was an immediate appeal of the ordinance that was filed September 16th. And in our laws, there's a 30-day period where an ordinance being passed can be automatically appealed, essentially placing some form of moratorium on any permitting of that parcel.
Mm-hmm.
So then that way, the parties involved must be known, their intentions be known, and that becomes a much more transparent process than the one that we're undergoing right now. And the reason why that's so important, and Brian, you alluded to behavior that I think every region of our club and every motorsports club ought to be doing, which is having someone constantly and consistently checking on the zoning changes of their community. And we didn't have someone doing that. Why would we?
Right.
Because race was in such a healthy condition.
Right.
We do that with another local track of ours for that reason. And so had we known better, that appeal would have immediately been filed and pursued.
Right.
The other thing I think is really important is that I've come to understand a lot of not so great truths as to how the current owners of PITT Race operated with their neighbors, and how through doing or not doing a lot of key things did affect the neighborhood, specifically in tax revenue, which as a business person, yes, we are supposed to focus on profit and loss, but I think there's an ethical and better way of doing things. That's not the subject of today's conversation.
Right.
But a collective bargaining organization between members of the motorsport community with the neighborhoods where their tracks exist is a massively important thing. Right. Because had I known that we were not serving the Triple B community well, I would be doing then what we are doing now, which is showing up to council meetings, but doing so in a respectful and ethical way.
Right.
Trying to raise funds for their fire department and other nonprofits. We'll be showing up on the 18th of this month and doing something of like a car cruise, car meet. But everyone coming is going to be bringing food with them that we will be providing to a food pantry, knowing that in the world today, a lot of people are struggling with food security.
Right.
These are all things we would have been doing years ago had we known any better.
A perfect example of that is the PGA Tour. They put on golf courses all around the country. They roll in for a week. They roll out a couple days later. They spend around $1 million of nonprofit foundation money at almost every event that goes directly to the community of that event. It is so important for them to be able, because having a big golf tournament is a lot like having a big race. People come in, there's traffic, everything basically has to suck for a week or two for the people who live there. And the way they make sure that they are asked back to do it again, because without those locations, they don't have a tour.
Exactly.
That's how they do it. And at every single location, and we do the stories all the time about the PGA Foundation is helping youth golf here. The PGA Foundation is doing this there. That's stuff that racetrack people should be doing because we're not the best neighbors.
Exactly. And for 40 months a year, huge tribe of motorsports people would descend upon PITT Race.
Right.
And 40 that gave us 40 opportunities to do something similar.
Right.
And we whiffed on all of them because we just didn't know. And so these are things that are low-hanging fruit, because if we can, generate that affection with our community neighbors, then there will never be a developer that goes to that council and basically gives them that carrot of how much better could things be without motorsports.
Right.
Because here's the other application that's really important. The description you just gave of a racetrack, right? It's noisy, it's loud, it's inconvenient, tons of travel, right? To a community that's been anesthetized by that for decades. For them then to be asked, well, why don't we just put a data center here? Well, the delta between those two is seemingly close. So
the difference between a data center, though, is that there's no traffic on the weekends, and people at the data center, if there's, I don't know how many people work at a data center. I believe once it's built, it kind of just does its thing. So that is sound to sound, probably very similar, maybe even louder for a data center. But, if you got people coming in and out of your neighborhood, driving around, and race car people don't always drive safely around a racetrack. That's another thing we deal with. I can see where a data center might be a more attractive option if you aren't a race person, if you aren't a car guy or a car gal. I can see the attraction in a data center.
Exactly. And that's why, again, thank you for taking a Sunday afternoon to have this conversation, because we within the motorsports community need to wake up to this.
No question.
Because there's a very real danger because of what we are and how we do things, where Pit Race could be very much a canary in the coal mine where we see a lot more of this happening. Right. So what we're trying to do is to learn everything we can so that everyone else can get savvy.
Right. So
that this is the one and only and not one of many.
Right. We're going to take a quick second here to do that tech tip. After that, I'm going to give some people some tips on how to keep track of what's going on around your racetrack. We'll do that. Let's do this real quick. Tech tip time. And, of course, it's presented by Babyface Fabrication. If I'm going to my first time trial, and you're a time trial guy, your handle is Time Attack DDR on Instagram. So that's why I figured you'd be the guy for this. I've got my street car. Maybe it's a Honda Civic. Maybe it's a Lamborghini. Who the heck knows? Gosh, if it was a Lamborghini, that would be awesome. I'm going to a track day for the first time. Give me one tech tip to make sure I have a successful, fun test day and then want to come back and do it over and over again.
Take your car to a prep shop in order to make sure someone does a true nut and bolt once over on the vehicle. Someone like a Babyface, someone like local to me, Rad Air and Atomic Autosports. If you're new to motorsports, by your vehicle going to a prep shop with knowledgeable hands being laid on it, it'll prevent a lot of issues.
Yep.
And it's funny that you bring this up. A good friend of mine and one of his friends went to Lime Rock just this weekend. And he did not get the RTV checked on his BRZ. One of the issues with that engine is they put too much RTV when they put the oil pan on. So that RTV loves to go into the oil pump. And Adios Amigo, his FA20 is now a brick. So I would imagine that any knowledgeable prep shop, knowing that car's limitations, would have asked that owner, hey, did you get that checked? And when he said no, they would have said, hey, let's check on that for you.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have happened. But going to a knowledgeable shop will give you the insurance of knowing your car is safe and competent. So when you go on track, all you have to do is focus on track time and zero stress when it comes to your car.
Yep. And you know what? To that end, also do a little Google on your car. That information was probably very Googleable, and or go to YouTube University. And it's just that little bit of knowledge is so important, because you're going to stress your car in a way at a track day that certainly your car should be capable of handling, or else you wouldn't do time trials, because if everyone was breaking their cars, we'd have no customers. But just that little bit of knowledge on this particular car, I would have never known that about a Subaru. So that's great advice. Okay, cool. There is our tech tip for this week, provided to us, of course, or brought to us by Babyface Fabrication. Talking a little bit about knowing what's going on in the community around the racetrack. I'm an old guy, and when I started, you actually had to go to the planning meeting to actually find out what's happening. You need to go to city council to kind of find out what's happening. You need to, or you need to go, if you wanted to see the transcript from a committee hearing, you actually had to go to City Hall and ask them to show you the transcript. Now we are so lucky because almost every municipality is either required by law to put that stuff online, depending on where you live, and that's the case in most places, or they just do it because they don't want to have to deal with people coming into their office and asking for that stuff. So the things you want to look at are planning commissions, zoning commissions, city council meetings. And there's two times you look. You look a couple of days before each meeting because you can actually see the agenda and you can see what's going to be on that meeting. And that's your first telltale sign. Now, there are things that happen in meetings that don't have to be on agendas. Depending on the rules of your municipality, there may be an opportunity to sneak in something on the agenda with some rules. So the agenda alone isn't always the best determining factor of what's going to be talked about in that meeting. And then after the meeting, if you can't go or don't want to or don't live nearby, because, we go to racetracks, but we don't live near those racetracks typically, you could go to City Council, to their website, and you can typically find the transcript, the minutes from the meeting. And again, we're looking for the Planning Commission, the Zoning Commission, which sometimes are the same people, sometimes they're different. Mm-hmm. And then most Planning Commission and Zoning Commission decisions, once they're made, then have to go to City Council for final approval, or your county supervisors, whatever the municipality is that's in charge of that location. We're really fortunate, Dan, that we don't actually have to go to these meetings anymore in most cases.
Yeah, in most cases.
Because I'm a geek. I find them interesting, but they're really boring. 99% of the time, they are really boring until you get one fired up thing on the agenda and people get excited about it. But that's really helpful for us. And that's why when I set up my Google searches, because all that stuff gets posted online and Google is scraping the internet every day, if something pops up, let's say around Buttonwillow, on the Kern County Planning Commission's website, I'll know about it pretty damn quickly. So that is a really great tool. That's how I kept track of all of the changes that happened at Auto Club Speedway, because that's a huge economic factor engine here in Southern California, no longer with us. And I'm still not convinced they're ever going to change it, because I have not seen an approval for the rezoning that's needed to do what they say they're going to do. And until that approval happens, that deal's dead. Or at least exactly. So and it's just, those are tools that we have at our disposal that we don't think about, but if we're being smart about trying to keep our sport alive, use those tools.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Because on the back foot, it's far more difficult.
Right.
Because the only things that we can do to affect change at this point is, and we've been doing this, showing up to council meetings, not necessarily to put pressure on the local officials, rather put pressure on the future owners of the pit race location. When they see 50, 75, 100 people show up, what that communicates is that whenever they are known and we can verify their intentions for the property, then we're going to triple in numbers, because then the locals will know what those plans are. And we've seen how a lot of data centers have been pushed out of communities, but it's only after the purchase has gone through.
Yeah.
And we're still in the before phase. And so your options are limited when it comes to post-sales agreement, but pre-sales agreement, you do have a lot of checks and balances that you can utilize through local governments.
Right. You said you're working on a playbook. How are you going to share that with people?
Well, the next thing we're going to do is we've worked with a local organization called Fair Shake. They are a nonprofit. They're collective bargaining focused and environmentally focused. And we're going to be hosting with them. The date is to be finalized, but a open digital town hall, probably in 2 to 3 weeks. And this is being filmed on November 9th.
Yep, and this one will air, if not in one episode, in 2 episodes over the next week. The first one will come up here in this Thursday, today, and then the next one will either air next week or the week after. I haven't decided how it's going to lay up, if we have to do 2 episodes. So we're gunning for
the week of the 24th in November.
Okay,
this might be a really good sequence to lead to that. But in the week of November 24th, we'll be hosting that digital town hall meeting. And with Fair Shake, we're going to communicate our developers playbook. So all of the different gory details of how these developers are able to use the tools available to them to purchase these lands, to do so very secretively, non-collaboratively, and be able to do what we've already seen done at places like Auto Club, Texas Motor Speedway, PBIR.
Yeah.
Our then actionable item is being able to develop different resources that are going to be available so that anyone within our motorsport community can go to our website, and we have one called savepittrace.org, in order to be able to figure out all of these best practices, things like where to find right to know applications, the different ordinances and rules, how to read them. We're going to make a ton of resource available to everyone so that everything that we've learned, you can quite literally just go to that site, get it in a very short amount of time, and then be able to do something meaningful against it.
Yeah.
So, and there's still some things we have yet to learn. You know, a lot of the things we found out, we've only found out in the past couple of days. So there's a lot that's going to be going into this, but what we're hoping to do is to create something evergreen, so that, again, Pit Race, its closure is a singular event,
Right,
and not first of many.
let me ask you two final questions here. Is there another piece of property in that area that would be suitable to build another racetrack?
Several.
Do you think the owners, once they get their big payday, might have that as their game plan?
Doubtful.
Is there any other group of people thinking that way and considering the effort to make that happen?
Several.
And my final question, which I think is one that it never gets asked but should be, how are the people who work at Pit Race doing?
Not well. Not well. And that's one of the biggest reasons why, you know, I've done as much work into this. And it's not just me, it's a handful of great people. Doug Weaver, Sean Sullivan, Laura Neagley. There's a great team of people who've all been volunteering their time. And I couldn't ramble off all of the names, but we've got probably 24 people working on different special projects so we can properly educate and inform the council of what's going on. But I'll tell you, the vast majority of quarter worker staff are no longer even showing up to work. Today's actually, today being Sunday, the 9th, is actually the last sanctioned event at the track. And it looks like they're only using the north track. I imagine that's because of staffing issues, because people have already been let go or they're retiring. They're just not going to come back. Those who are still showing up are doing an incredible job. But I'll tell you, knowing them directly, knowing them personally, they've been very hurt by this process. Many have been there for a decade. They really haven't been cared for in a way that's respectful of how good they have been to not just their bosses,
right,
but also the motorsport community. So I'm very sad for them. One of the things that we have done is offered services to work with them on their resumes, interviewing skills, and networking for new jobs. In 2025, it is increasingly difficult to find a job, let alone a motorsports related job. But those people know how to get a hold of me and know that we have a resource available to them. I'll tell you, in general, the motorsport community here in Pittsburgh is very sad. We're very sad because our home, in many ways, feels like was taken from us. Was it ours? In a legal sense, no.
Right.
But anyone who goes to a local track, I feel, has a degree of ownership through their patronage and support of that track's success. And that's a part of what makes motorsports great, is how collaborative it is.
Right.
And I think the best people in motorsports recognize that no one owns any of this. We're all stewards,
right,
of this community. And so I know for many, there's been a lot of heartbreak and heartache. We have been, through SafePitRace.org, I've probably had 30 meaningful conversations with people just to walk them off the ledge, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But we will persevere. There are incredible core of people in this area. We're already working on what our 2026 calendar is going to be. It is going to be full of great events. So we will move forward. We will march forward.
Right.
But everything that we're trying to do is to make this a singular event.
Yeah.
So, and thank you for the conversation today, brother.
Yeah.
This is great.
And one other thing we can do from afar, because, I live in California, it pains me to see what you guys are going through. I can't really do much from here other than having discussions like this, which I do know is important. But if there's anybody at home, and I will find it and put it in the show notes, give a donation to the local food bank near PITT Race. People who work at racetracks don't make a lot of money even when they're working. A lot of these jobs are seasonal. Maybe they're retired and they're doing this as their retirement gig. But if you lose a couple $100 a month from your paycheck, even if that's all what you're making, if you're on a fixed income, that's devastating for people. And while I know it's maybe people are too proud to go to a food bank, that's what we can do. So I will find the web address or however to make a donation to your local food bank or to the local food bank near PITT Race. I think that's one thing that we can do, especially as we go into the holidays. This is a tough time of year for people in the best of times sometimes. And when you add this to it, it can be difficult. So I think that's one little thing that we can do to help out. So that's my suggestion. And I will make the effort to find out who that is or where there's maybe Dan, if you can send it to me. But we'll find out who the right people are to make a donation to help out. Not the owners of the racetrack, but the people affected by this. And I have no ill will against the owners, but I think they're getting a pretty damn good payday, so I'm not too worried about them. But I do have concern for the people who work at our racetracks. Most of them are lovely people who, have a passion for what we do and have helped us have fun for years. And they deserve our thoughts and support at this moment. And thoughts and prayers are great, but let's open up our wallets and, even if it's $10 or $25, we're doing a lot of food bank stories now with the government shutdown and people who are needing to go to them. And the amount that a $10 donation can help a food bank is crazy what they can turn $10 into. So, doesn't take much, and every little bit helps. So, and if the people at the racetrack don't use it, someone else will get good use out of it in that area. So it won't go to waste no matter how, no matter what you do. So
agreed.
Do you have one final thought you want to leave us before we say goodbye?
Yeah. The last thing I want to make mention of is that one of the things I've really come to find out through this whole process is that losing a racetrack is very much like losing a friend. And it feels very weird. But in the last year, I've had a personal buddy and then a friend of a friend both pass away due to mental health issues. And the amount of very, let's say, just hard conversations I've had with people over the past couple of weeks has really led me to understand two things. First is that for most of us within the motorsport community, I know that for us, this is such a release and relief, what we do. It's how we orient our life. It's what gets us up in the morning. And so when we feel that our world is becoming collapsed or smaller, it creates a lot of doubt.
Yeah.
So then the second thing is, as much as it is important as a community to come together and be with one another, one of the biggest things is also just, mental health. I know it's also November, so we talk about mental health as an important thing this month. One of the things that we seek to do is that if there are people local to us that need to talk to someone, we will financially make that happen. That's a personal commitment. Because I want to make sure that our people here in Western Pennsylvania are well served and well taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest concern, is the care of our tribe here.
Yeah.
Through all of this.
And that's a difficult conversation sometimes for people to pick up the phone and make, or say, "Hey Dan, I'm having a problem. Do you have 10 minutes for me?" And if you don't have someone who you feel comfortable doing that with, whether it be a friend or a family member or, someone in your church, whatever the case may be, I will put the phone number for the suicide prevention hotline in the show notes. Those people are amazing, and they don't know who you are, and they don't care who you are. They're there just to help. So, you know, if it's because you don't want friends to know you're going through something, I get it. But there's places to go that don't have to involve your friends. I personally think friends and family are the best people to go to for that, but that's just me. You know, that's my deal. But yes, please pick up that phone and go to whomever you can. And if you can't, hit the hotline and they will be there for you. So, Dan, I appreciate you taking the time. These are tough times for you guys there, and I get it. Other areas have gone through this with their racetracks. And I'm sad to say that I don't believe this will be the last time this is going to happen somewhere. So I think it's an important discussion to have, and I appreciate you helping me keep this in a constructive and respectful conversation. We can go down the rage lane very quickly with this stuff, and while that may be everyone's initial response, it's rarely productive. And my goal for this show was to be constructive and productive, and I think we've done that. So thank you very much. So.
And thank you, Brian, and thank you, everyone who listens to this.
Yeah, and I hope a lot of people do. So, all right, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the SCCA. I'm Brian Bielanski. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you got something from the show. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and leave a note in the comments as well, and check out the show notes for all the information that we plan to give you. We do a new episode most every week, and we're on episode 150-something now, and it's always here on our the Racing Network on YouTube, and now it's called the Racing Network on the podcast as well. We were trying to get all the branding to line up together. So please check us out. Please subscribe so you know when our next, hit the little bell thing so you get warned when the next one's coming up. So you guys have yourself a great week. Stay safe and go play with cars.